Goedenavond. Fijn dat u er bent. En ieder jaar weer denk ik van, oh, wat een hoop ouders. Fijn dat u er bent en met zoveel. U heeft kinderen, want daarom zit u hier. Ik heb ook kinderen. En wat wij allemaal willen, is dat onze zonen en dochters een goede toekomst tegemoet gaan. Dat ze gewoon goed terechtkomen. Daar zijn we mee bezig als ouder vanaf het moment dat ze naar de basisschool en vervolgens naar de middelbare school gaan. En u werd door die scholen bij hun leren en hun keuzes zeer betrokken. Ja, en dan? Ik weet het zelf nog heel goed. Toen mijn oudste dochter 12 jaar geleden naar het HBO ging. De boodschap was eigenlijk, laat los. Ze staat nu op eigen benen en je hebt als ouder geen bemoeienis meer met haar studie. Ik vond die abrupte overgang toen echt niet fijn. Want je wilt toch betrokken zijn bij de nieuwe leefwereld van je kind. Sterker nog, wij van de Hanze Hogeschool vinden dat dat moet en dat uw betrokkenheid een van de belangrijke factoren is voor studiesucces van uw kind. En daarom organiseert de Hanze Hogeschool nu sinds 5 jaar in oktober voor alle ouders van alle eerstejaarsstudenten deze avond. Met als doel dat wij u vanavond meenemen in de nieuwe wereld van uw zoon of dochter studeren aan het HBO. Ik begin met u een vraag te stellen. Wie van u weet welke tentamens uw zoon of dochter de komende periode heeft? En welke opdrachten af moeten? En wanneer? Nou, steek eens even een vinger op. Nou, ja, gelukkig. Gelukkig. En of er gestudeerd wordt voor een 6 of voor een 8. Of er überhaupt gestudeerd wordt. Voor ons is die eerste tentamenperiode een eerste belangrijke meting. 2 kanten op. Allereerst studenten die een 8 of hoger halen. Deze studenten vallen op. Dat zijn wellicht talenten. Studenten die boven het maaiveld willen uitsteken, misschien onze toekomstige onderstudenten. Maar ook de andere kant op. De studenten die een onvoldoende hebben behaald. Komt dat omdat ze niet hard genoeg hebben gewerkt? Of dat ze misschien erg moeten wennen aan het andere systeem van leren? Gelukkig is er voor hen nog geen man overboord. Er is een gelegenheid om het vak nog 1 keer te herkansen. Kern van mijn verhaal is vanavond: hoe kunnen uw zoon, dochter, wij en u als ouder er in gezamenlijkheid voor zorgen dat we elkaar in 2018 weer zien bij de diploma-uitreiking. Allereerst moet u weten dat studeren aan een hogeschool heel anders is dan het leren op de middelbare school. In principe is de student zelf verantwoordelijk voor zijn studiesucces. En dat betekent dat de student zelf zijn studie plant en organiseert. En dat is wennen. Sommigen pakken dat zo op en anderen hebben wat langer tijd nodig. En daarom is er vanuit de opleiding met name veel begeleiding en sturing in het eerste jaar. Zo heeft iedere klas een mentor, studieloopbaanbegeleider, waar uw zoon of dochter steeds terecht kan met allerlei vragen. En de mentor, studieloopbaanbegeleider, praat ook regelmatig met uw kind over zijn studievoortgang. Zeker als straks, na het eerste blok, niet goed genoeg gescoord is. Een ander verschil met de middelbare school is dat de hoeveelheid lesstof die voor een tentamen moet worden geleerd veel groter is. En de praktijk leert dan ook dat als een student niet direct begint met studeren, aan het begin van een blok, en er zijn 4 blokken per jaar, de kans groot is dat hij zijn tentamen niet haalt. En wij doen er alles aan om de studenten dat besef bij te brengen. Nog een verschil met de middelbare school is dat uw kind hier wordt opgeleid voor een beroep. En daar hoort professioneel gedrag bij. Wij spreken hen daarop aan. Op tijd komen moet je later, ook op je werk. Ook samenwerken en plannen, feedback kunnen geven en ontvangen en professioneel met elkaar en met de faciliteiten omgaan. Wat u ook moet weten, is dat een student hier gedurende zijn studie, in die 4 jaar, heel veel keuzes moet maken. En het begint zeker ook al in het eerste jaar. Misschien heeft u er nu al mee te maken en dat uw zoon of dochter voorzichtig hardop tegen u zegt: pap, mam, ik ben er eigenlijk niet meer zo zeker van of de opleiding wel zo bij mij past. Stoppen? Iets anders gaan doen? Of dat uw kind rond de kerst van zijn studieloopbaanbegeleider het advies krijgt om te stoppen met de studie, omdat wij er dan al niet meer in geloven dat hij voldoende studiepunten haalt in het eerste jaar. Of dat zijn inzet, motivatie veel te laag is. En deze dingen gebeuren en horen bij 17, 18-jarigen die nog volop aan het zoeken zijn, midden in hun ontwikkeling staan of gewoon het nieuwe studentenleven, Wouter, het nieuwe studentenleven in de stad Groningen veel te leuk vinden. En daarom stopt ook ieder jaar ongeveer 25% van de studenten in het eerste jaar. En dat geldt voor alle opleidingen, binnen de Hanze Hogeschool 25%. En landelijk ligt dat, geloof mij, veel hoger nog. En wij zeggen dan: ga thuis serieus het gesprek aan. Als het echt niet gaat, laat je dan uitschrijven van de opleiding direct naar de kerstvakantie, zodat je geen studiefinancieringstijd inlevert. Maar het kan ook zijn, en dat gebeurt gelukkig in de meeste gevallen, dat uw kind zegt: ik vind het hartstikke leuk op mijn opleiding. Ik vind het een mooi beroep en sterker nog, de behoefte heeft om de komende 4 jaar niet alleen te studeren, maar ook andere belangrijke ervaringen op te doen. Voor die studenten zijn er heel veel kansen om het allerbeste uit zichzelf te halen. Zijn talenten optimaal te ontplooien, zelfs uit te willen blinken. En wij zouden heel graag zien dat u die ambitie stimuleert. Zo kan uw zoon of dochter geselecteerd worden voor het Hanze College, of dat hij studentassistent wordt, of in het bestuur gaat zitten van onze studieverenigingen KIK of Real Time, of deel gaat uitmaken van de medezeggenschap, of hele hoge cijfers haalt en voor cum laude gaat. Bij het maken van al die keuzes spelen wij natuurlijk een belangrijke rol, maar ook uw rol is belangrijk. Betrokkenheid en klankbord, gesprekspartner zijn van uw zoon of dochter. Tot slot. Wij nemen u vanavond mee in de nieuwe wereld van uw kind. Een wereld die opleidt voor een beroep in de communicatie, in de ICT, de mediasector of de creatieve industrie. Waarbij uw zoon of dochter begeleid wordt door docenten, vakmensen die heel vaak zelf het beroep in de praktijk nog uitoefenen. Ik dank u zeer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to you all. Actually, you may not be the only one present here. Maybe we can have the next slide, because a lot of parents from our students come from abroad. Our students come from abroad, and we have invited them to watch with us what's going on today with a video stream. That's the reason why I'm wearing a microphone. That's the reason why we have somebody with a camera at the back. You're all taped, but don't worry, we won't leave it on the internet. Well, Welcome to our program. In our program, we have some 36 nationalities represented in the first year, and of course, parents come from as many different countries, probably, and sometimes even more. For the parents who are watching by video stream, if you really like this event, please tell us by sending us an email. The email address is there. And I'm going to tell you something about our program. My name is Roos Kempen. I am the program manager of the Bachelor of International Communication. And I've been that since 2011. Yes, please. As our Dean Trani Faber said, your son and daughter is in a sort of transition period from high school to university, which is quite a big change. And the fact that they have to work together in groups for some students is something they have been used to in secondary school, especially probably in the Dutch situation. But for other students from abroad, it is something they're not used to at all. They need to make their own planning. They have much more responsibility. The path is not laid out as completely as it is in high school, in secondary school. And especially in all these different countries, it's also very different. And one of the biggest changes is that your son and daughter has to speak English all the time. They have to, what we say, think, breathe in English while they're here. And you see a lot of difference in the level of English they speak. But at the end of the program, I spoke to Jessica last week. She is our student who will be presenting on her experiences with the program. She said, my level of English has grown so much by doing this program that I really feel quite confident about it. So if your son or daughter is worrying about this, don't worry, it will get better. Another big difference is the cultural difference. As I said, in other countries, a lot of times people are not used to behave the way our Dutch students behave in class. And a famous example is that one of our teachers found out from a student that asking questions was something that was not done. Because if you ask a question, actually you give a sign to the teacher that he has not explained properly. So asking questions, yes, you can do that, but then after the lecture. And so they had a long row of students who wanted to ask questions afterwards. And we have to teach them that asking questions is a sign of commitment, is a sign that you're thinking along with what the teacher is telling you, and that you're doing a good job, actually. You show to the teacher that you're working there. Okay, thank you. What does our program look like? You see the year in the vertical lines and the blocks in the horizontal lines. We have made it so that they will be very well prepared for the choices they have to make. There are 3 majors in our program: communication and public affairs, communication in business, and consultancy in communication. And for each of these subjects, they have an introductory block in the first year. They are now in this block, an introduction to communication in public affairs. At the end of the first year, they have this is in Dutch. They have a block that's called Orientation to the Profession. And in that block, they do 2 things. They do some research on what it's like to be a communication professional. So they interview professionals. And there will be a conference at the end of this block displaying the communication profession. There will be professionals who have lectures, keynote speakers, and they will themselves present a poster in which they present their findings of this research they've done. And at the same time, what they will also do is think about the major they will choose, because that's what they're going to do in the next block. And then the rest of the years, they will be in that major. At the end, for each and every student, there will be a Bachelor of Communication diploma. So actually, the majors differ, but for a large part, they are also similar, because they all get the same diploma, and their body of knowledge and skills, as we call it, box, a body of knowledge and skills, has to be similar, because they all get the same diploma. And the difference between the three majors will be especially put into the projects they will do. The context, the type of assignments they get in the projects will differ from major to major. Next, please. And then, after the first year, what happens? The first year, as I said, is a year where they find out which major they would like to do, where they also find out whether this is the proper program for them. Are they in the right place, or should they consider something else? And at the end of the year, we will decide whether student and program staff in the program will decide whether they will be going to the next year. And there's a pretty steep requirement there. Maybe I can get the next slide. After this orientation phase, the selection takes place. They have to have 48 credits out of 60. 60 credits, each block consists of 15 credits, and after, at the end of the year, they have to have at least 48 credits to be allowed to go to the next year. And that's quite a steep requirement. If you know that they get courses of 5 credits each. So if they miss out on 3 courses, they have a problem. But as Trini told you, there will be resits for every task and every assignment and every exam they take. Yes, please, the next slide. What have the results been then these last few years? Actually, we have been improving. In 2011, 26% of the students got their first year in one go, 60 credits in other words. In 2012, 37% got that, and last year, 51% got their P in 1 year, and that's an incredibly high number. And it's also it's a flattered number because we had an extra chance for the first years because we're phasing out the last program, the old program. They're in a new program now, and the extra chance was given. That's why the results were so very good this year. But I expect there will be a result of somewhere between 40 and 45% that will get their P in 1 year, and that's what they go for. Where do they end up? Actually, there was some research done by the national group of communication programs. So we always have meetings with our colleagues from different cities in the Netherlands. And last year there was a survey done, and we found out amongst alumni, people who have graduated from our programs, that in this survey 59% of the people work as a communication professional. And 25% work elsewhere and not as a communication professional. And 10% indicated that they were still looking for a job, which in itself is quite a good result, I would say, because that's not always the case. And where do they work? 24% work in government institutions, 22% in consultancy agencies, and the rest work in business. And if you remember, we had 3 specializations. One was communication in public affairs. These are the type of students who might work in a government institution or for an NGO, a non-governmental institution, a non-profit organization, or for any institution that deals with public affairs. We have a specialization called consultancy in communication. Those are the students. Quite a lot of them work for consultancy agencies, so they give advice to companies from the outside. And the rest work in business, and marketing communication has become an enormous important part of the communication business. That's because these last, well, let's say between 5 and 10 years, the profession of a communication professional has completely changed. Whereas formerly we had the old media, film, paper, adverts on television to reach to the public. It was sort of broadcasting your message and hoping you found the right people to receive it and do research on who your target group is. Now the means of communication, the media, is in your hands. You probably have a telephone or a device in your pocket, and you are able to communicate to the rest of the world all the time. It is not the ownership is no longer with the communication professionals. Whole revolutions, Tahrirplein in Egypt, for instance, Tahrir Square in Egypt, whole revolutions are started by using these social media, and that has completely topsy-turvied the profession of a communication professional. And that is probably why a lot of them work in business now, because the businesses are usually the first to adapt to these new situations. The rest of the evening will be spent on the experiences of a student in her 4th year. She has been through the whole program, and she has made all those choices that your sons and daughters will have to make soon. And she'll tell you something about how these choices came about and the types of choices she made, what was different, what was difficult, and what was really nice about the time that she spent here in this program. And after that, you will get a choice of what we are doing. You may have wondered, you must be joking, Lego. Lego, yes, Lego, that's what we do. But that will be done by our teacher, Pieter Swieringa, who will show you. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Jessica Edens, as already announced. I'm a 4th year international communication student, and I'm here to tell you something about my own experiences on the studies here. So, how did I get here? Well, I attended an open day. I was at the presentation for communicatie, the Dutch version of communications, and international communication, and another one which I don't remember anymore. So I did that, and I got triggered to do international communication because I really enjoyed the international context of international communication. So that's why I chose it. However, I was kind of doubting whether I was able to do this because, you know, about the English. Am I good enough? Am I strong enough in my English to actually study in the language? So they told me I should do a tag-along day, and I did. I was an international communication student for 1 day. I really liked it. I got first-hand stories from international communication students. They told me it was definitely not that difficult if you were already like if English was one of your better subjects. So I took the risk, and I'm still here, so that's a good thing. Yes. So I'd like to tell you something about how my school career went, to be, to say it like this. So in year 1, what I still remember is that we got the introduction to the intercultural world. We already had this discussion a little bit. For me, I really, really enjoyed that. It was so different from what I was used to in high school. We were just with Dutch students, at least people that were born in the Netherlands. So this was something completely new to me, and I really liked it. Also, it was very eye-opener. It was a really eye-opener because, well, I always assumed that the Dutch culture was the normal culture, and they told me it was not really the case. So they told me, actually, Jess, there's not such thing as a normal culture. So, well, that was kind of a shock to me. I was aware of the Dutch culture being, well, let's say it like this. I was aware of other culture thinking that their culture was the normal culture. I mean, in Japan, they think their culture is a normal culture. In Spain, they think the same thing. Of course, I did as well, but they told me it was not exactly the case. A big eye-opener. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the introduction to the working in international project groups. So that's something I really, really liked, and I think Raef also that's one of the things that just really, really nice from this education. Just because if you're enjoying to learn something about other cultures, and you got to be open-minded as well. Because I gotta say that I think the most miscommunications in the project groups come from the background of people. Because for me, I'm Dutch, so I say what I think, but for other people, that can be either sometimes quite harsh or rude, sometimes even, or other people they don't really dare to say their opinion that of at least how I would do it. So yes, definitely few highlights. So in year 2, things get more complex. You get more independency, especially in the project groups. You learn by projects because of real clients. We got a care institution as a client, and that was a real client. So they actually asked us to help them with their issue. So that's really nice because you get to learn how things work. So how it actually works to communicate with a client, how they actually respond to the things that you say or do, and something which is really nice. An example was for us was that we had to do a project for a care institution that was in transition. They were reorganizing the whole company, the whole organization, and yes, that's something that we had to communicate to the employees. So I hope you understand it a little bit if I explain it like that. For me, a highlight was the crisis PR thing. I really enjoyed doing that. And the preparation for year 3, because in year 3 you go abroad, and you have to choose the school that you want to go to. So, or well, at least you got to choose the country that you want to go to and the school that you want to attend. So, yes, next slide. I did my minor in Budapest in Hungary, and my internship I did in Derby in the UK. I gotta say that definitely a culture shock is something that is real. And yes, so minor I did in the first half year. You can choose whether you do your minor first or your internship first. I chose to do my minor first, not really a specific reason for that actually. So yes, next slide. Fancy. Budapest, there you go. Really nice city, that's for sure. The things that I would like to tell you here is, can you maybe put the next slide? Yeah. So how did I arrange the housing? Because I can imagine that if your son or daughter is going to go abroad, where are they going to live? Not on the streets, I hope. At least that was not for me the case. I don't know anyone that has that had that problem. Anyway, I'm also going to tell you something about my experience at the university and my overall experience as an exchange student. So, yeah, how did I arrange my housing? Well, I enrolled on some groups on Facebook. Budapest groups, exchange students groups from Budapest, and there I met a girl. She posted a message on Facebook, and she was looking for someone that was actually looking for a house as well. So she was looking for a roommate, and I replied to this, and we became instant friends and roommates. So that was really nice. That was before I went to Budapest, and we decided to look for housing on the spot. So yeah, so we decided to do that on the spot in Budapest itself, which was sometimes quite difficult because we were, let's say you are homeless for a couple of days, and that is not the best feeling ever, especially not in a big city. Anyway, we stayed in a temporary apartment, and we found something after a couple of days. So we found a really big palace, so that was really nice. The experiences at the university, where I was kind of afraid for was that, do the teachers speak good English? Well, yes. Here in this university they do. So no worries there, at least if you go to Budapest. I'm not sure about, I think you went to Peru. That was...
The level was less, but still.
It was followable, okay. Yes. And well, they had on the university they had this huge ESN Erasmus student network, and that was really nice because they organized trips, they organized a lot of things, parties and everything. It was really cool. And now my overall experience as an exchange student, well, friends. It was just really, really nice. I had the time of my life there, so I found a lot of friends, still in touch with many of them. So internet. Yes, that's really, really nice to do. Okay, and now I want to go to Derby, England. This is not in Derby, this is in Nottingham, but you know, Nottingham is a little bit more known, and it's only 20 minutes away from Derby. So let's get to yes. I found my internship together with the ISPO, and that is an international student placement office, and they are for free for students. So if your son or daughter, or if you are looking for an internship in England, definitely go and find an agency that can help you, because it's really nice. They have more. SPI UK is something else as well. Anyway, things were getting different, yeah, because it was a 9-to-5 job, and I wasn't used to that, and especially not anymore after Budapest. So yes, that 9-to-5 job. And my internship was not as challenging as I hoped, but I had those assignments that I had to do. A special assignment you have to do in the 3rd year, and you have to do an internship assignment. And the special assignment is actually some kind of assignment that you have to do in cooperation with your company. So they give you an assignment and you have to do that. For me, that was a LinkedIn page. I had to come up with I advised them on doing a LinkedIn page, and I advised them how that would be successful. So, and it was rainy, England, you know, it's definitely rainy every day. So, but yeah, I was responsible kind of for the department that I was working in. I was not in charge of it, obviously. I like to say that, but I was not. What company were you? I was in a company for an online schooling. Online schooling company, and I was in charge for the people that enrolled until they got their diploma. And yeah, basically that's what I did. I was kind of the person that they would call to if they had questions about the process, or when they want to have an exam and everything like this. I was in charge for that. So next slide. Now I'm year 4, and things were getting different again, because I went back to school again, and I chose the international business communication major, and that's actually something that was nice for me, because I like businesses and marketing, and so I chose to do this. I chose to. We have a Chinese port as a client at the moment, so we have a client again, a real client, which is really nice, because again you get those experiences to work with a real client. Yes, intercultural sensitivity is key again, and that is something that is key from the beginning until the end of the studies. So keep that in mind. That's definitely something that you're gonna need. Tomorrow actually we're gonna have to pitch our ideas to the client via Skype, to our Chinese client via Skype. So bear with me, wish me luck. I hope it's gonna be all okay. In the last semester, I'm gonna write my thesis, and I don't know yet what exactly I'm gonna do that about. So we keep that for what it is now. And yeah, what will happen after IC for me? I don't know yet. I'm thinking about doing a master's in communications. But, you know, I keep everything open, so maybe I will work. I will find a job, and I will start my career.
So, thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. Also, the people abroad that are following us through the video stream, thank you for joining us. What I'm going to do is, today, I'm going to give you a taster of the new project management method that we use with our students. And it very much relates to the question that you just asked. Why change the program if the results are good? Well, we don't necessarily need the best results from the students. We want students to be prepared for the real world, to be able to go into a business and do what they need to do. That's why we keep close contacts with the business world, with various organizations, also on the governmental level. And talking to these people, we found out that today, the hottest tool on the block, if you want to be prepared, is the project management method we call Scrum. So that's what we're going to do today. What we're going to do is very similar to the very first lecture, the very first class, in the very first week. that your sons and daughters get when they visit our institution here. And there's multiple ways of doing that. We usually do a workshop for Scrum that takes about 3 hours. I'll explain what Scrum is later on. But what I had in mind today wasn't because we don't have 3 hours, obviously. We're going to try and start with the actual assignment of the project. And once we've done that, I'll explain how this relates to the project management method, and I'll explain the philosophy that's behind Scrumming. So why Lego to do Scrum? It does need a little more introduction that I just gave you. Scrum is a project management method. Now, what does that mean? It comes down to the fact that if you organize something, even down to your birthday or your wedding, you need to think ahead, you need to plan. And the more complicated the assignment is, the more planning you need to do, the more thinking you need to do. You need to do that in a very structured process, in a very structured way. It's sort of like a guided process, really. Now, there's multiple schools of thought if it comes to project management. One example would be Prince2, which is very famous, very popular with the Dutch government as well. I've been to Geneva to get trained in project cycle management, which to this very day is the most popular project cycle management method for non-governmental organizations and for the European Union. So if you do any project for them, whatever the size of the project, they want you to use that model. For our students in our field, Scrum is the way to go. It's all started out in 1986 with a publication in the Harvard Business Review, where some Japanese scholars, whose name I will not even try to pronounce, thought about ways of collaborating on complex projects and how to facilitate that and how to best do that. That is where the seed for Scrum was planted. And in the early 90s up until 95, that's where we really see Scrum growing and getting more popular, especially in the field of IT. So if you build a website, or if you do satellite software, you'll probably use Scrum. If you work for Philips, if you work for Google, if you work for Yahoo, and many other big companies, Shell, the government here, the municipality, they Scrum. That's what they do. So we want our students to be aware of the techniques that they need to be able to use once they finish this program. I guess that's enough for now. So let me shift gears here a little bit. I suppose most of you here are Dutch people in this room. Are you familiar with the Dutch TV show Heel Holland Bakt? The Dutch Bake Off. Is that something you're familiar with? The Dutch Bake Off? For those people that are not familiar with it, it's just a group of people that love to make cakes and pies and everything. And they do a contest. That's what they do. They have to compete every single week, and if I remember correctly, last Sunday were the finals. So the best home baker was selected. There's a British version of this as well. It's very popular. So usually when we have this workshop with our students, we have them sit around the table. We give them the basics of Scrum, and having them actually do a simple project, because that's what this is. It's just an example of a project. We usually use Lego to have them build a city. Well, instead of building a city today, I would like to invite some people in the room here. As you can see, there's 3 chairs per table, so I need 9 volunteers. I've already asked Raaf, maybe Rose feels like joining in. Anyone else in this room, I'll ask you to come forward in a few minutes. What you're going to do is do what they want you to do. Once again, for those not familiar with the program, these are the 2 judges, and that's our lovely host. It's a very famous TV show, and they just want you to bake that cake. So we're sort of, taking their role, so to speak. It's a pretty old picture, but I think it works. So can I please ask 9 volunteers to sit here at this table? All you need to do is bake a cake with Lego. And there's going to be a few instructions. I don't ask you to do a presentation. So if you just will sit here, that will be more than enough. I need 9 volunteers. Anyone? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If you're comfortable to come forward, please come forward. Yes. Yes. Now, please take a seat. Now, if you want to learn something, the best way is to do it. You can listen to me, but you'll retain about 10% of what I tell you. If you actually get a chance to practice a little bit, then learn, and then later on maybe explain it to each other and work together, your average retention level is much higher. That's one of the reasons that we like to do a workshop. So, what we have on the table here is a bunch of Lego. And I want them to make a product, right? It can be a pie or a cake or whatever. And since I'm the one telling them what they have to do, that's the same in the classroom, of course, we're going to have to set some priorities here. What do I want these people to focus on when they work together baking a pie? Well, first of all, these are your ingredients, what's on the table. So you can use the marker, you can use the Post-its, you can use the pen, and first and foremost, you can use the Lego on the table. Now, you'll have to be a little creative here, because what will I ask you to do? I'll ask you to prioritize, and what we have for that is a product backlog. It simply means that's a list of things that I feel, as the product owner, that's the word we use here, or as the client, or as the person giving the assignment, the things that I think they should focus on. And depending on the size of the total assignment, there's more or less Post-its here. Well, we're only going to do one small session here, so we're only going to do a part of the final pie. But of course, if you feel like putting in more effort and you have some time left, feel free to put in a little extra. It's not a competition, by the way, so you don't have to beat the others, okay? Now, as you can see, each group has its own sprint backlog. I'll get into that term later on. What's important to know right now is that one person of each group is in charge of the sprint backlog. I suggest that's going to be a student. That's you for today, if I may. Then we're going to select a few things here that you're going to focus on. And of course, if you go and start working on them, they're going to be in the in progress component here. Now they're in the to-do list. I'm going to select a few things here. So the people in charge of the Scrum board, that's the name of this piece of paper here, are going to have to put these up because they're prioritized by the client. Once we start working on them for a specific amount of time, in this case it's going to be 10 minutes, they're going to be in progress. Once you've done your piece of work, you put it here. So we can see the progress these people are making. So if I can ask Raf, and if you'd be so kind, that's for group number 1, that's the group in the middle, and this is for you. I'm going to make a selection here of what I want the pie to look like. Well, I think the most important thing here is that I want the international angle. That's my priority. So if you put a flag on the cake or the pie or anything that you feel highlights the international aspect of this pie. The other, please feel free, by the way, to stand up and select these components that I'm mentioning and put them on top of the to-do list. Or to save time, you can even put them in progress because after that we'll start working on it. So, as I've said, the international angle, we can already put it here just to save some time instead of prioritize here. What's more? Well, of course, we need 3 layers of cake. And I want different colors, just so you know. That comes second. I love my strawberries, so does my 3-year-old daughter, so we're going to include some strawberries as well. Now, this is the basic pie, right? If you get this done in 10 minutes, I'm pretty satisfied already. But if you have some extra time left, I'd like 4 candles. And if you really want to impress me, there's a real candle on the table. We have some fire here, if it works. And it does. So you can actually light the candle on your cake, if you really want to impress me. We're not going to include this one, but if you have some time left to include some whipped cream, you know, do more work than I asked you to do, I'd like that as a product owner. Okay? Now, what's next? Instead of starting the timer already, because we're going to time this, I'll give you the opportunity to ask maybe 2 or 3 questions if something comes to mind. Do you need more details for the assignment? Is there anything where you're like, well, we really need to include that here as well? Or maybe a question about the layers of cake. You know, maybe I want specific colors, for example, right? Ralph? Yeah?
You say international angle. Do you want it to be cultural or do you want it to be international in general?
Good question. I'll leave that to you. Impress me with your creativity. Any other questions? Maybe this is a good example. There's various client roles, and I'll show you some other client roles when you start building the pie. Very often your client has no idea what they want. So they'll need an example of a product, and once they see it, they're like, I kind of like this. You know what? If you change this, that, and add that, I'll be satisfied. And you start working on it again. Scrum allows you to do that. This project management allows you to do that. So for now, I'll see what you come up with in terms of creativity. Any other questions, perhaps?
Do you want any specific shape?
Well, I love the logo of Hanze, but I don't know if you've seen the logo. That's going to be hard to do in 10 minutes. But if you think you can, you might be able to draw the logo on the piece of paper. That would be really nice. Since we have an international theme, you can go for a flag, right? That would be an option as well. That's pretty much it for me, I guess. So, you know what? Let's start doing the pie. Please bear in mind, I'm going to stick to 10 minutes. I might, in between, talk to the audience. I'd just like you to continue building. And I might fool around a little with you, right? I might interfere you. That's for educational purposes, so if I do something like, oh, this is really uncomfortable, don't worry about it, okay? So we're setting the time right now. Let's get going. Time's running. So the 4 candles, that's it.
Dus je wilt de internationale aspecten in een vlag vertalen die...
So come on, people, hurry up. This is not really working out, is it? This is way too slow. I'm not impressed by what I'm seeing. So you're going to use red on this one? I'm not sure if I like red. Well, I'll do it anyway. We'll see how it works out. I'm not too sure here if this is going to work out. Rule number 1 when you scrum. Rule number 1 when you scrum. The product owner is not supposed to interfere these people. So if you look at the client roles, a person yelling, this is not working out, I don't like what you're doing, the process is not really going the way I like, change the color. That is definitely something that we do to tease our students and see if they remember that golden rule that we usually explain before the sprint. So. You're 1/3 in. You're 1/3 in. 6.5 minutes. We have one group that has some time left. So the big question is, what are they going to do? Maybe 10 minutes was a bit too much for this exercise. I had hoped to give some comment during this process, but it was too noisy, so I decided to not do that. That's why I finished the time early here. It's just an exercise as an example. So what's the next step? I think it would be nice for us to have a look at the products that these people made. They know what the deliverable was. I can see what the progress is they've made, but as you can see, it takes a little time to get used to using the sprint backlog. People forget and then do that later on. That's one of the reasons that we start very simple. Secondly, for those of you that didn't hear that, I guess that goes for most of you that were doing their pie, I'm not supposed to interrupt you when you're working. When I do that, like commenting as I did on this group, which was somewhat inconvenient, saying that I didn't like it, that the color wasn't good, the size of the pie wasn't good. If that happens when you're working, you'll get completely stressed out. That's one of the things that we do with our students, but I take it to the next level, and people really crush whatever it is they're building because I make them so nervous. The whole idea is that you learn how to deal with various types of clients, whether they know exactly what they want, are extremely friendly, or stress you like crazy every time they can. So that's one of the things I usually throw in when they're doing this exercise. Now, as the product owner, as the client, and as the teacher, that's the same role I have when we're scrumming, it's up to me to review the results of their work. So to comment on, in this case, the pie. You could say if the taste is good, if I'm happy with the candles, if the size is correct, if I like the international angle. Now, normally when we scrum, the next step would be to take these comments, see to what extent the product or the criteria that I have, which I expressed during the review, have changed, to add new post-its in this case, where students will probably say, well, you know what? He wasn't happy with the 3 layers of cake because he didn't like the colors, so we'll have to change the colors. We'll take a note here. The blue has to be in the bottom, and that's something we'll have to start on for the next session, because we've had one sprint, that's the word we use, of 10 minutes. Then we'll do another one, and usually we do 3 sprints, 3 rounds of 10 minutes. But now we've just had one. As you can also see, people get excited. They start talking, they start standing up, not using their chairs anymore. That's exactly what we see happening in the classroom. People forget to take breaks. They don't take coffee anymore. They don't leave the room. They just continue because they have to plan their own breaks. So, people are just really into whatever it is they have to do. Not just if they have to build a Lego city, but also for the actual project that they have to do in the classroom. Another thing that stands out, and you'll see that happening as well, there's usually someone that is more or less in charge of the process. We don't have a leader, but some people are more inclined to, for example, take care of client contact, which is me, or to make sure that the Scrum board stays organized and everyone knows what he or she has to do. This is the person that we call the Scrum Master. They're not the leader or the boss, but it's the person that is in charge of the process, of the entire process. May I kindly request you to take your seats again? Thank you. Thank you for your efforts. You can imagine we've been talking about intercultural awareness. We're working with people from various cultures. If you're going to work in an international organization, you better know how to do that. Through these types of exercises, students get to practice that. Once we've done this short workshop with students for 3 hours, we're going to work on an actual product, an international communication product. For IC students, that won't be a website, but it could be a media advice report. This is the entire process that we've seen here as well, but then in Scrum terms. We have a team. The team is selected based on qualities and nationality. And we try to look at gender as well, although that is not always very easy. So we make sure that we have a group that presents a good mix of what we have in the classroom. Then we have the release planning. We're going to look at the actual product, what people have to do, what it consists of, what various steps they need to take. We're going to define those various steps in the product backlog. That's the next step. And then we're going to plan the sprints. Students can do multiple sprints. Usually we do 1 sprint per week. I see my students about 7 hours per week where they get to do 1 sprint, and at the end of the week they present the results of that sprint. In this case, it's a media advice report for an organization that is struggling with an issue. Let's say that you're McDonald's and you have a really poor reputation if it comes to corporate social responsibility or being eco-friendly, and you want to change your image. And you do some what we call greenwashing. You try to look more green than you are. And then people call you out on that. Working conditions are awful. You use a lot of chemicals in your production process. That will be a huge issue. It's up to our students to advise, for example, McDonald's in this issue, to deal with this. In order for them to get to selecting that specific issue that I just mentioned, because students can select this issue, up to coming up with the media advice report, all of that is organized in various sprints. So we need to plan those sprints per week. Students use the Scrum board to do that. They work together in the sprint. We use this as an educational tool, so me stepping away from their process is not as strict. If they want to ask me any questions, if they need a coaching session, we'll happily facilitate that. Now, every day when they meet, they do a daily stand-up. What's that? Well, you'll remember those meetings, right? Where you sit in a chair, you have a coffee, you have another coffee. There's a lot of people that like to hear themselves talk, and the meeting goes on for hours and hours and hours. Instead of doing that, students have to do a daily stand-up. It means they stand in front of their Scrum board for not more than 5 minutes. That's how they begin their session, and that's where they say what they're doing for the team, what problems they face, and if they probably need any help. There's a few questions that they need to ask themselves. This is a vertical slice. I'm not going to go into all the details. So they discuss what they have to do, and they get going. Eventually, they'll have to show me what their product is. A pie in this case, or a media advice report, or a Lego city. And it's up to me to say, well, I see that if I look at the things that we want you to understand as a part of this course, that you've managed to include those learning outcomes, that you use the definitions in your media advice report that we want you to be aware of, that you know what an issue is, that you know how to give proper advice. That's what we can look at. If that doesn't work out, students will have to, based on the review session that we have, that's the sprint review, maybe adapt their product that they've delivered for that specific week, which is a small part of the media advice report. Now, this is group work, and we have problems. Things don't always work out. People get into, well, not a physical fight, fortunately, but they might argue. They might be uncomfortable with the quality of some people's work. So how do we optimize that? Scrum allows us to do that through a retrospective. They can do that within their own team, and very often I try to do it in the classroom with all students listening to all groups so they can learn from each other. Now, in an intercultural context, that is a bit difficult because a lot of people feel uncomfortable expressing how they feel about group dynamics to everyone present. So we need to work around that, and that is still somewhat complicated to facilitate that, to make that work. But that's what we try to do. So in a more abstract model, this is what we're doing. So I took out all the drawings now, and this is basically what we have our students do. We know what the product is. We organize it in various sprints. A sprint in this model, which is the IT model, lasts 2 to 4 weeks. We take 1 week for each sprint. We'll have our daily Scrum meetings as a part of this 2 to 4 week sprint, in our case 1 week, and the result is a potentially shippable product. That is the outline of Scrumming. I hope it makes more sense now if you've seen how this works, how people organize their workflow, because that's really all you're doing. You're organizing your workflow. It's a guided process where you go through various steps that help you to reach and to build that final product, whatever that is. Let's very shortly look, now that we've looked at the process and we've seen an example of this process, what the philosophy is of Scrumming. Scrumming is agile, Scrumming is self-organizing, and Scrumming is flexible. Agile usually remains untranslated in Dutch as well. It's a term you come across very often, and a synonym in English would be snappy or fast. The focus here is on the product, right? We have to create something really fast. We don't want a huge amount of documents. We want a product as fast as possible, created on the spot, based on what we know at that very specific point in time. It's self-organizing. As you've seen, people sitting at the table working on a project are perfectly capable of figuring out who has what qualities. Usually it takes a little time before they really know that. And they function better as a team after each retrospective. They know what they need to do based on daily stand-up. They know what I prioritize. So they self-organize. And as I've said, they usually skip breaks, which is not necessarily a good thing. And I've had classes on Friday afternoon where people continue when the class is over, just because they're so much focused on this product and there's a sense of ownership, which I really like. I think that's the best aspect of Scrumming. And Scrumming is flexible. If your client changes his or her mind, which they very often do, you can easily adapt the criteria that you have by specifying them better based on the meeting that you have with your client when you deliver your product, which in this case is the lecturer. And they can adapt to that, which is awesome. Now, let's have a look at this slide here. It's another aspect of what I would like to term the Scrum philosophy. There's an Agile manifesto. As I've talked about those two Japanese authors, in '95 in Silicon Valley, some IT developers, web developers, sat around a table and thought about the best way to do this for the IT field, and at this very point in time it also applies to what we do in communication systems and international communication. There's, in their view, a huge amount of difference between the new way of working and the old way of working. The argument mostly being that this is very dynamic and that aspect is very static. We work with the client. We don't follow whatever it is we agreed on at the very first meeting where we had to meet very often. We don't describe what the product should look like. No. We make something that works. We don't want a huge amount of paperwork saying what the website should look like. No, we want a working website. We don't care about the paper. We ask them what they want. We work with the client. They have the opportunity to share their thoughts with us. We talk to users even, the end user. What would they prefer? We're not going to talk about guidelines, contract negotiation. And this very much relates to the flexible component that I just mentioned. We are capable of responding to change, and we do not follow a plan. That, in my view, is pretty much the essence of Scrumming, of the Scrum project management method. There's much more to it than what we've done just now. At first sight, it might seem like a piece of paper with some post-its. Don't you think that post-it, the company would love that we're doing this? I think they would. There's much more to it. If it comes to planning, we've taken that out right now, and as I've already mentioned, in an intercultural classroom, there's quite a few things here that really do need extra attention. But I can assure you, I've been in education now for 6 years. I am extremely satisfied with this. I think that talking to the world of business, to governments, to communication professionals, and having the opportunity for us to work on this with our students is amazing, because I really see a different vibe in the room. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you. Don't you? Yeah. If you enter that room, you don't see a group of students sitting there just listening to the lecturer and taking notes. No, you see a group of people that work on their projects on their own. They're scrumming. Scrum is a project management method where students work in small teams and they can see what every team member is working on because they have a Scrum board where we visualize all the activities that help them get to their final product. Back in the day, it used to be an IT project management method. It was used by various big companies, including Philips, but also Google, Yahoo. It was used to design satellite software, but also websites. But today we also use it for our communication students that are not necessarily working on an IT product, but maybe a media advice report. And there's, like each project management method, you go through various steps. It's a process, it's a guided process. In this case, the process has a few characteristics, and these are, it's an agile project management method, it's self-organizing, and it's flexible. You see that that enthusiasm takes over. So the classroom is really bustling with energy.
Scrum is different. That's basically the way I would describe it. Normally, when you do your projects, which we do a lot at Hanze University, you get your project and you work on that for 8 weeks straight, and you divide your time according to. But with Scrum, you work in sprints, and sprint means every week you do a certain assignment. And that's a lot different, because usually when you do a project, the first 4 weeks you do absolutely nothing, and then afterwards you're all stressed out and then, oh, we gotta finish the project. But with Scrum you can't do that. So for me personally, it gives me a lot more structure and creativity to work with that.
This is a way that is used to really defragment all the parts of a project. So it's hard to miss anything in the end, I think.
I mean, it's something different. It's not like some people just sit back and just wait for orders. Everybody contributes to this.
I think it builds up our group, because the group is really working together. You can divide the tasks, and we just benefit from that.
For me, it was a new experience. I've never heard of Scrum before, and I'm still kind of getting used to it. So at least if my future employer wants to use this method, I know how to do it.
Scrum allows students to display their talents, and it allows students to show what they have in store instead of just following the guidelines that we give them. And that's exactly what we want to see when students go out in the real world and work for whatever organization they might have in mind.
Is there anybody who would now like to talk about something, or has a question, or would you like to ask about other things that you have heard your son and daughter talk about? Yeah.
What does the assessment program look like?
You have basically three big assessments. One for the project, one for what we call the knowledge line, the body of knowledge and skills. One is about concepts, and the third is the professional development line. They each have 5 credits, which is a big amount. Yeah. So they get 3 assessments. In the project line, they will be assessed on the quality of their project, and they will also be assessed on the quality of their own work, the effort they put into it, if they have cooperated well, and whether the quality of their work was good enough. And this will be done by both fellow students and by the teacher. That's what we call peer assessment and assessment by the teacher. There is a division of 5 plus 0 credits for this project. 5 if you've done the work well, and if you don't pass that part of the process, that you are mal-assessed by your fellow students or by the teacher has the final word, always. So, and then you won't get those 5 credits. So students know that they have to contribute, and if they don't, they won't get the 5 credits for the product. Teacher has the final word, meaning if you have, for instance, a 7 for the product that you do, then students might decide that some of them have delivered a bad job and should get less, a lower grade, or the teacher might decide that if he has really seen that somebody's not there all the time and not contributing, not doing anything, he can get an insufficient grade, even if the product was worth a 7. The second is an overall assessment, a written exam, in which the students will be presented with a case, and the concept that they have learned will be that there will be questions on those concepts, and the type of concepts they've learned in this block, for instance, have to do with media theory. Communication theory, and research. How do you perform a research? So they will be presented with a case, and there will be questions on each of these subjects. Again, 5 credits. If they fail, they have to take the test again.
We're not only scrumming. So yes, this is the project, but related to this are theory classes where we discuss media theory, public relations, communication theory, and research. So once they write their media advice report, we of course also want to see that they include whatever they've taken from those theory classes and include that in the sprint. I mean, they're very much connected content-wise. So.
Yeah. And we've made very strong connections because the teacher teaching the conceptual line, so the knowledge part, is also a coach in another group. So he knows exactly how to connect these two things, and it will be connected very strongly. And then the third one is the professional development, the skills department. And there they learn about how to use the language. We have some tools for that. We use Success with Taal. There have been a lot of problems with the Success with Taal tool, but I think they have now been worked out. And this is a sort of a self-management tool where they can work on their language skills and upload work they have done, and the language teacher can, the teacher for the professional development line can give feedback on their performance there. And they can make a portfolio of their language. They can upload presentations, audios, films, but also written stuff. The second part of the professional development line has to do with intercultural competencies. They learn about how to deal with other cultures. We've talked about that extensively. And the third part is often has to do with visuals and learning to work tools. They have to use a lot of tools, digital tools to do everything they need. That has 5 credits as well and is divided in 2. 4 credits for the skills. They will be assessed in presentations or in what you upload for the teacher. And 1 credit for reflection. And we always have this reflection part because, as you know, with Scrum, they have to learn to build on their own qualities. For instance, if they have not been a Scrum Master and they would like to be a Scrum Master in the future, then this would be one of their goals, and it comes out of the reflection. And this is just an example. There will be more examples. So reflection will always be a part of the professional development, and it will also help them to make their choices and to decide on things such as internship or study abroad.
And how are students informed about what they have to do, for example, with this written exam? Is there an assessment matrix?
There's an assessment matrix, there's a mock exam, and they are available on Blackboard. Are they available yet?
Yes, they are.
Yes,
yeah.
they are. Yeah.
And of course, lecturers refer to the exam during the class as well. I mean, we highlight what we believe to be important.
Yeah. And also the matrices for the rubrics for grading the professional skills is also online, and of course for the project development as well.